welcome everyone to the Zorich Podcast, Conversations with Leaders and Legends. I am Chris Zorich, and on today's show, we have a two-time podcaster. On this show, the first one was Tony Rice, but that was just an anniversary. The second one was Reggie Brooks talking about his book, but now we have this individual. I don't want to mention her name yet, but we have this individual who is talking about her book as well. And she is a true Notre Dame legend, knows a lot about the history of Notre Dame football. She's a legend in her own right, fellow alum, author of 3 books on Notre Dame, Echoes from the End Zone, The Men We Became, and Triumphs from Notre Dame. And we have a new book called Domer Dishes, which I think is going to be great. And selfishly, I am actually on the back cover, which is the reason why I'm promoting it. No, that's not true. Actually, the reason why I'm doing it today is because we're actually going to be hanging out together, doing an appearance tomorrow at Augie's Locker Room in South Bend at 1811 South Bend Avenue, and from 1 to 3. And I'm going to try to convince her to cook a couple of the dishes. Maybe not. But I wish to have.
And thank you for having me on the show.
Going to be there, right? No, exactly. She's gonna have several of her books there as well. But I think it's gonna be a great time. So, folks, ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Kelly.
Thank you. So happy to be here. We couldn't have been more on top of the world. I don't think, like the students who were juniors the year I was a freshman, their senior year, they had only seen 1 loss at home.
Okay.
So like our first 2 years, we didn't see a loss at home to that last home game of our sophomore year. And then we were like, oh, we lost. Like, what do we do? Do we still party tonight? Like,
oh my God.
I mean, you know, when you're so used to winning,
sure.
That loss was like totally foreign, you know.
And unfortunately, I actually remember that loss. I think it may have been. I think it was Stanford actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. God, yeah, that was my senior year. So that's really bad. So thank you very much for bringing that up. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry. But you know, I don't think we realized how lucky we were.
Sure.
I mean, we just thought, hey, you go to Notre Dame and they win. Like there was. And my dad kept trying to explain to me, you know, he graduated in 1965. So he had 3 awful years of football. Right. And then Era shows up his senior year, and then Hewart and Snow, and they have a fabulous year. And then the next year they win the national championship. So he's like, you know, trust me, I've been there, that they don't win all the time. And every weekend I'm like, yeah, but they do win all the time, you know? And we didn't realize how lucky we were till Bob Davie showed up at Notre Dame. And then we were like, oh, we were really lucky.
Well, and I think that's really kind of amazing that you had a chance to kind of experience that, because as players, we kind of felt that exact same way. I mean, we didn't know what losing was. And regardless if it was home or not, I mean, it's something that we rarely did. So it's really encouraging that the fans in the stands kind of felt that exact same way too. That's really exciting to hear.
We just felt like we were indefensible, like we're indestructible. We can't be beaten, you know. And then eventually you do get beaten. It's like, oh man, now what do we do?
So is that where kind of your love of kind of Notre Dame athletics or Notre Dame football started, or was it kind of a situation that may have happened?
I loved sports pretty much growing up. I played sports. I didn't play them well, but I enjoyed it. It was something. My dad was kind of always a coach or an assistant, and I played softball, and I wasn't great at it. I ran track, and I wasn't great at it, but it was fun, and got to college and played inter-hall softball and football. And I think sports is great. I think every kid should play sports because the things that you learn on a team, being part of a team, and the wins and losses, and how to get along with other people, and a coach you may not like. I mean, you're going to go into life and have a team at work. You're going to have bosses you don't like. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the kids who play sports do better in college and they do better in life just because of all those really simple skills that you learn that, you'll take with you through the rest of your life.
Absolutely. That's very, I mean, you can actually kind of take that snippet and really send that to every kind of soccer mom out there and just kind of let them understand that, regardless of what the sport is, what sports do beyond the field of the court is it teaches life lessons. As you said, you could have a manager that you may not have to deal with, but guess what? That's your job. You can't just walk away from that.
Yeah, my daughter she played field hockey all 4 years in high school. She was varsity as a freshman. It was like the perfect sport for her because in soccer, you can't get away with as much as you can in field hockey.
Okay.
And now we've given this child a stick and, and so she was always rolling her eyes at her coach and stuff. And I'm like, girl, you can't show that on your face because she'd venture all the time. And we used to joke, if her mouth doesn't say it, her face probably will.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of her freshman year, she was voted most likely to pick a fight with the ref or the coach. I'm like, yeah, that's my kid.
Wow.
But you got to learn, right? Like you're going to have bosses. You can't roll your eyes at them or, make those facial expressions. So she learned a lot freshman year about decorum and how to carry yourself and what you can get away with and what you can't get away with, You might be able to get away with tripping some girl on the field, but don't roll your eyes at your coach.
Right. And so what happened? I mean, junior, senior year, how did she? Was
she became a leader and she excelled and she,
that's great.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what she learned in field hockey definitely helped her succeed in college. I mean, she's a senior in college now. She's only had 2 B's. She has all A's. Wow. And she's kinesiology, which is pre-occupational therapy.
That's
so
amazing.
She's
you guys got to be really proud of
killing it. Yeah. So,
awesome.
She definitely came into her own when she went to college. But I, attribute high school, not just academically, but athletically to what made her successful in college. And it'll make her successful the rest of her life, But I was talking to Denise Carcos. She's a classmate of mine. She was in my 3rd book. She's now the CMO of Sirius XM Radio.
Okay.
And she was giving me some statistics about their company and a lot of other corporations will hire athletes first because they know what they're getting, because they know they're going to get somebody who knows how to be on time and follow the rules and get along with others. And I think that's huge, to see that all these companies want to hire athletes because they know they're going to get a quality worker.
Sure. That's awesome. And it's interesting because not only, from the athlete's perspective, because oftentimes athletes have a hard time translating what they've learned to the actual workplace. And so I know when I was working at Notre Dame, it was a challenge to kind of explain to them how that's awesome. Because I have my door closed because my cats hopefully will not come in and do the exact same thing, but that is so awesome.
Yeah, he's like, this is my lady.
Exactly. Well, I love animals. Obviously, I think there's somebody on the show that loves animals more than I do, but we'll kind of get into that because, folks, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it from the last show, this woman owns and runs a zoo, which we will definitely get into a little later. But the cat is just that's kind of an awesome part. But so the idea that it's challenging sometimes for student athletes to kind of put, well, hey, I was a captain. Or, hey, we went undefeated and I was one of the leaders on the team. Well, let's find a way to word that on your resume so now it looks like a positive situation as opposed to just saying, lettered 2 years on the softball team or, on the lacrosse team.
Yeah, I mean, I think those skills and leadership definitely translate into the workforce. And so even when my son was trying to craft his resume, it's like, okay, let's talk about how your extracurricular activities, build into what you're going to do as a job. So, I mean, I think every part of your life needs to be represented on that resume because it's all skill building, whether it's a team or, whatever it is. So.
Well, now check out this transition. Now, as a writer, I'm sure you do great resumes because you've written several books, which we're about to get into. So, what was the first book you decided to write about Notre Dame?
So, the first book is called Echoes from the End Zone. I was in a contest back in 2011 for biggest fan of the Big East Conference. And so it was a writing contest. It was a blogging contest. And kind of through that journey, I became hyper aware that the media loves to focus on the negative stories. So you're always going to hear about the guy who dragged his girlfriend out of an elevator,
Sure.
All that kind of stuff. But there's so many positive stories that come out of athletes and out of universities, especially Notre Dame. And I'm like, there's so many good things that need to be told, right? There's positive stories. There's just not enough positivity in the world. And so I reached out to Oscar McBride. I'm like, hey, I've got this idea. I want to write stories about you guys and kind of your journey. How'd you get to Notre Dame? What was your experience like? And where are you now? And so the original blog posts were called Where Are You Now? And so that was how they started. And Oscar was the first and Rick Meyer was the second. And, in 2 blog posts, I suddenly was getting 10,000 page views a story,
Wow.
which was like crazy, And so in about a year, I interviewed 32 people. And then I'm like, okay, what do I do with all these, And so one of the guys in the book, Marv Russell, he was an author, and he's like, I will be your writing coach, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. And so that was kind of how it happened. It's funny. He texted me last week, and he's like, I just want to say I'm so proud of you, and my wife and I are so happy that we knew you at the beginning. And,
that's terrific.
And that was really cool because it just all kind of came full circle,
Sure.
I mean, he was between Oscar and Marv, like without the two of them, I was like, I don't know anything about writing a book. And Oscar was like, sure you do. You know how to write. You're a smart girl. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't mean like, great.
Oscar.
Yeah. But, between him and Marv, they just kept pushing me along. And then Oscar was like, I think we should ask Coach Holtz to write the foreword. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't know Coach Holtz. And he's like, okay. So he sends an email to Jan, and we sent Coach the first 5 chapters. And we were like, okay, I'm writing this book, here's the preview. Jan's like, well, Coach is really busy. So if you could draft something, then he'll kind of personalize it. And so I said to Oscar, well, Coach's voice better than I do. So Oscar started to draft something, but before we could even send Coach a draft, he sent back the foreword. He's like, I read the 5 chapters. I love it. Here's your foreword. And I cried. I literally cried.
Wow.
I was like, I am nobody to this man. And then he'd just randomly call me and be like, how's it going? What can I do for you? Wow. And like, I know how much he cares for all of you. Okay. And if you needed anything, you could pick up the phone, he would be there. But I am not a player. Sure. I mean, I met him a couple times in school, and I remember him. He came to our dorm and did some little like conversations with Coach Holtz, like in the basement of Siegfried.
Wow.
It was the craziest thing. And so we all huddled down there, and he talked for about an hour. And then like I had a book that I had him sign, and and he told us, if you ever need anything, if you're having trouble in a class or your boyfriend breaks up, breaks up with you, my door's always open. You can come anytime and talk to me. And I'm like, yeah, right.
Amazing.
Like, I'm going to go knock on Coach Holtz's door. But that's just how he was. Like, my door's always open. If you need, help through that breakup, you come on in. I'm like, okay.
Well, but it's just so amazing because it just kind of talks about the person that he is, because obviously as players, that's the way he talks to us. And so knowing that kind of, this is genuinely who Coach Holtz is, that's really encouraging, and I'm sure, and I'm not saying, everybody loves Coach Holtz, but the idea that, he's willing to, and now, this is when he was in the heyday. He just won a national championship, and all of a sudden he's going to take an hour out of his evening or his day to come down in the basement of one of the dorms at Notre Dame and answer questions and talk to people. That's amazing. Like, who does that? I don't see Nick Saban going to like the Smith dorm on Alabama's campus and talking to the women's dorm in the basement.
No. And I'm guessing he went to every dorm and did that. I don't think we were a one and done thing. So I called home and was like, Dad, you're not gonna believe it.
Did Aaron ever do this when you were in school? Wow.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of those phone calls. Dad, you're never going to believe, just because stuff like that happened. And, I became Catholic when I was at Notre Dame. And when they confirmed me, it was Father Hesburgh and Father Joyce.
Wow.
I almost fell out of my pew. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so called home and was like, Dad.
Wow, that's amazing.
When my dad, so he started out, he was Navy ROTC at Notre Dame. And so the summer after his junior year in college, he flew fighter planes in Pensacola. But he was that guy that buzzed the tower a few too many times, and they shoved him in a submarine.
Oh my
God. So he was interviewing for the nuclear Navy for the submarine program. And he's interviewing with Admiral Rickover, who asked him 3 questions. And one of them was, do you know Father Hesburgh? And my dad's like, no. He's like, the whole student body doesn't just know Father Hesburgh.
Wow.
But only asked him 3 questions, and that was one of them. So
that's amazing. Wow. Well, okay. So now you've finished your first book. What's that process? Is it, hey, I have a stack of books in my living room, what the hell's going on? Or, do you send it to like all your friends and say, hey, or do you want people to kind of review it? What's the process? And I'm going to ask you this once on the first book, because it's kind of such a leap of faith.
Yeah. So Marv was like, invaluable, not only as a writing coach, but kind of helping me figure out how to get it out there. So he had a connection at the Notre Dame bookstore. So here I am, first time author. We march into the bookstore spring game weekend, and I'm like, I've got this draft of this book and it's going to be out in the fall. Will you carry it? And so the same 5 chapters that I sent to Coach Holtz, we gave to the bookstore, and they're like, sure, we'll carry it, And then, of course, the publisher gets it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those places. And then, I reached out to all of the blogs like Her Loyal Sons and One Foot Down and Irish Illustrated. And, hey, my name's Lisa. I'm writing this book. If I send you a copy, will you review it? And it was just a lot of scrappy hustling, just trying to get it out there, and just sent everyone a free copy. Like, I sent one to Swarbrick and Coach Kelly, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm just trying to get it out there,
That's terrific. Wow.
And people seem to like it. So then I wrote more.
Well, okay. So now let's kind of talk about that. So did you have more information that can go in the first book, or were you like, hey, let me think about another book?
So I had 32 interviews done, and I only put 25 in the first book. So now I've got some egos that are a little bruised. And so that was kind of the impetus that, well, I need to write another one.
Of course. My Notre Dame wonderful teammates, of course. My Notre Dame athletes, of course.
Like, how do you tell this handful of people, well, you didn't make the cut.
You didn't make the cut.
And it was like, not little people, I just
oh my gosh,
took the first 25, and then the next 7 or 8 I was like, well, so I knew I was going to write another one, and so that it was great. I've already got a third of the book done before I even really get started, so that was good. And then by the time I got to the third book, it was time to get other sports involved, and so I went into baseball and basketball and hockey and got some women's sports in there. And so I don't know that I think people really love football. So I don't know that people like the diversity as much as I did, I mean, for me, it was nice to kind of shake it up a little bit.
Sure.
But I don't know, like, it's hard for me to tell whether people just would rather it to be all football or whether people really liked the diversity. So I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Well, and it's really interesting because, I mean, when you talk about kind of like what folks are doing now, it's really interesting because, I mean, people knew them as kind of rough and tough athletes, basketball players, volleyball, softball players, whatever it was. And now all of a sudden, you're going to talk to them about kind of raising kids and a family in tragedy, I mean, so, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure they're willing to kind of talk to you a little bit, but like, how far do you go? I mean, do you push in certain circumstances, or do you just kind of let them kind of flow and you kind of take what they give you?
I just kind of let it flow. I mean, I feel like my interviews are more conversational, right? Okay. So I'm not some hard-nosed reporter trying to get a scoop on a story. Sure. So, and I think people appreciate that kind of conversation. I've had several people who I didn't know prior to a phone call tell me afterwards, oh my gosh, I felt like I was talking to somebody I had known all my life.
That's great.
Because you have that instant connection when you say we both went to Notre Dame.
Right, exactly.
We had a lot of, we've all had a lot of similar experiences. So, and then, as I'm interviewing somebody, I do 2 things. I try to interject my own stories. Oh, that's funny. That happened to you. Well, this happened to me. Okay, well, that kind of builds that camaraderie.
Right.
And then I always try, before I interview somebody, to find somebody, one of the other guys who knows that person, who can tell me something that no one else would know. Okay. Like before I interviewed Tim Brown, I talked to Alvin Miller, and Alvin Miller was like, tell Tim XYZ.
Right.
So I launched the interview. I tell Tim XYZ. Tim is just howling with laughter. And he's like, you had to have talked to Alvin. He's like, because no one else would know that,
That's great.
So, but that's an easy icebreaker, right? You have a funny story or an embarrassing story, and the guy's like, well, shoot, she did her homework,
Well, and it's great because, again, now you're building that rapport. And I think one of the lessons that I've learned on the podcast, doing this podcast, not kind of knowing what the hell I was doing in the beginning, but folks felt more, or my teammates felt more comfortable talking to me than they would like a reporter, because I'm not going to dive deep into anything that's personal, but more important, but the byproduct of those conversations were personal situations that happened, good and bad. And, after some of the shows, I'd say, hey, do you want me to edit that out? And they're like, no, that's cool. You kind of brought it out. And so I think that's kind of interesting that what you were saying is when you're able to kind of build that rapport, people are willing to kind of have that conversation.
Yeah. And I can always tell if somebody's like, oh, nope, we're going down a path I don't want to go down. And then I steer it a different direction. You can tell when you're getting to a subject that And it's like, you know what? We don't have to go there. It's all good. I don't need to go into dark places if you don't want to share it. And some people want to share it because they want to say, okay, I learned this hard thing, right, and I want to prevent someone else from learning this hard thing. Right. But not everyone has that comfort level, and I totally get it. Like, everybody's different in how they want to show their story, and I enjoy it. Like, I love people, and I love having conversations. I mean, my family just hates the fact that we'll be in an airport and I'll be talking to somebody and they're like, why do you have to talk to everybody? That's just who I am. We were in Mexico last week and I made new friends, and my husband's like, of course you did.
Wow. That is hilarious. You're listening to the Zorich Podcast with author Lisa Kelly. So when we come back from this break, want to talk a little bit about this new book, The Domer Dishes, because there's a lot of folks I want to ask you about that are in this book, but then also want to touch a little bit on the fact that you love animals a lot more than a lot of other folks that I know. So we'll be right back.
We run the clock, Super 16, it's the cream of the crop. College football time of year, don't stop.
You're adding this guy.
Just another go dome with the courage, heart, skill, and will. Bringing you the best 16, serving up a plate for the football fiends. Breaking the best 16 college teams. Football fans, it's the show where you dream.
Ain't no bias, Chris Zorich breaking truth. Traded in the golden helmet in the passport suit. With the tape, never lies, college ball, he's a stoop. Breaking the top 16, not the top 32.
I don't mean to cut you off like a Zorich jersey, but you ain't really grinding unless the jersey dirty. Hit the running back like a Mack truck behind the 30-yard line. It's game time, my team riding off the sideline.
You look at Chris like this with a fact checklist, going over college teams like a 50 scientist. Steve streaking from his head like in his playing days. Super 16 polls on the show straight away.
It's the FBS, the best of the best, from the ACC to the SEC. Pac-12, Big Ten, Mountain West, Sun Belt, and the Big 12. Open your eyelids, who the best like the clock? Super 16, it's the cream of the crop. College football time of year, don't stop. With Christopher Zorich, just another go dome with the courage, heart, skill, and will. Bringing you the best 16, serving up a plate for the football fiends. Breaking the best 16 college teams. Football fans, it's the show of your dreams.
So that was a little promo of the Super 16 poll show where I rank the top 16 college football teams in the country every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. Eastern. So you got some awesome people in this book. Domer Dishes right over my shoulder. And some awesome recipes. And there was one guy, Ryan Ritter, who posted the fact that he was a manager for the football team and the golf team. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And he posted, and I was like, oh my God, yes, that's awesome. I cannot wait to try it. I think it was Texas chili or something like that.
Yes, Texas Red.
There you go. So not only I want to talk about that, but also, so now this is a book of, well, all right, first of all, before I talk about it, why don't you tell us how you decided to do a book on food?
So all my friends who know me know that I don't cook. I am not the cook in my family. I do not get to cook holiday meals. My husband took that over. Okay. I burned noodles once and they're like, you're done. Like, wow. You're out. Okay. I don't cook. Okay. It's like the running joke with all my friends. So we were tailgating, spring game. And Lee's like, Lee Becton, I got this great idea. You should collect favorite recipes from a bunch of the guys and, a little story about why it's their favorite recipe and write a cookbook. And I'm like, and my girlfriends are over here just rolling like, I'm like, you've known me since I was 19. Like, I don't cook, right? And my mom is like, I don't understand how, I cooked great and you don't cook. I just was not. I mean, I cooked while the kids were growing up. I didn't totally ruin anybody, but cooking is not
healthy.
right.
They have 2 arms and 2 legs.
Yep. Cooking is not my forte. So he just wouldn't let it go. So this was probably like 2017. I had just finished the second book.
Okay.
I had another book in mind that I had already written about 70 pages. And then I ended up not finishing that and then went on to write Triumphs. And so I finished Triumphs in 2019, and 2 years later, Lee's still like, you need to write this cookbook. And I'm like, you're barking up the wrong tree. Like, you need to find somebody else. And so January of 2020, I was like, fine, I'll write your stupid cookbook. Well, January 2020, I'm like, it's 2020. It's going to be a great year. Like, we had no idea what was coming at us, right? So 2 months later, the world shuts down, okay? And, now we've got the zoo. We can't feed animals, and it was just a nightmare. And so, we're in shutdown for 7 weeks. And I was like, okay, well, this is the perfect time to write a cookbook, because what are we doing? We're stuck at home and we're all eating, right? So my husband was like, I'm in. He's like, I'll do all the cooking.
Wow.
You do all the recipe collecting. I'm kind of an amateur photographer. I do sports photography, but I learned one of my favorite authors is Rachel Hollis, and she always talks about you can learn to do anything on Google, right? Okay. So I'm on Google, how to do food photography.
Oh
trying to build a light box and get the lighting right, and what's the aperture. And so, I took a gazillion pictures to get some good ones, but, he had fun cooking. I had fun doing the photography. And then, some of the guys, you have a favorite recipe, but that doesn't mean you have a story about why it's your favorite recipe.
Sure.
So I kind of balanced it with, okay, if you don't have a story about why it's your favorite recipe, share your favorite Notre Dame memory. So, the storytelling that goes with the recipes is kind of a hodgepodge of, some of it's really good stories about the food, and some of it is, stories about football. So I think, if you're a football fan and you like to eat, this is kind of the best of both worlds, right?
That's awesome. That is awesome. And for folks who may be in the South Bend area tomorrow, Lisa and I are actually going to be at Augie's Locker Room, which is 1811 South Bend Avenue in South Bend, Indiana. And we'll be there from 1 to 3. And she'll be cooking and talking. I'm kidding. She'll be signing her books. I'll have some memorabilia and stuff that you can get.
And I'll be there. I'll be there all the way till 5:00. So if people can't get out that early, I'm just going to hang out at Augie's all afternoon. So
nice. Yeah. And well then maybe Augie should bring out a hot plate or something like that, so you can start doing
some chili,
some of the recipes. Exactly. But I think it's cool because one, and this is kind of a shameless promo for Augie's Locker Room. It literally is a museum when you walk in there. I was in there not too long ago, and you could literally find something from every era. Rockney to Era to Divine. Everybody. And I never knew that Lou Holtz had like a doll. He has a doll. Now it was from Arkansas, but it's a doll that I saw there. So it's absolutely incredible.
We were so my daughter goes to Arkansas, and we were down there for their home opener, and we're in this record shop. and they had a record. It's a Lou Holtz record.
What?
From when he was at Arkansas. And I tried to buy it. And I was like, I will pay money for this. Like, I don't care. And the guy's like, it's not for sale. I'm like, everything's for sale. Give me a price. So he was like, well, we stumble across these every now and then. I'm like, here's my card. I want this record.
Oh my gosh.
So now he's got a record and a doll.
That's hilarious. And now I'm surprised Augie doesn't have that,
Yeah.
Because literally he has it's interesting. I went in there looking. Actually, he was able to help me get my Notre Dame helmet behind me, looking for like a certain era of a helmet. And I played in the 80s, and I was like, man, I need a late 80s helmet. He was like, well, let me see. Goes around. Now he has some really great, brand new stuff. Some beautiful, flashy,
Right, but you don't want the shiny gold.
Exactly.
I want the 1988 matte.
Exactly. The nasty beat up. So that's where I got that helmet from Augie. But so excited to have a chance to be there tomorrow and hanging out with folks. But so here's my question: did you eat every dish that is in the book?
We ate every dish. We cooked them all.
Really?
50 things.
Oh my gosh. Now, I'm not going to ask you ones you didn't like, but what were some of the ones that were like really challenging?
So Billy Hackett has a steamed chocolate pudding, which is more like a cake.
Okay.
But it has a specific container that you have to steam it in, that has to have a tight lid for the pressure of the steam. And the apparatus that I had was just not the right thing. So it didn't exactly turn out as intended. And it took like 2 to 3 hours to make. I'm sure it's amazing if you had the right, like I figured out what I needed and then we made it again and it worked out fine. But so, and I very specifically say in the cookbook, you have to have this or it's not going to work.
Oh my God. Well, but I won't ask you your favorite dish because I don't want you to kind of make
I don't want to
any enemies. But some really interesting folks in there. First of all, selfishly, I love Tony Rice's recipe because he is worse than me. He definitely doesn't know how to cook. And I've spent years with him, years and many nights with him, and he absolutely does not cook. So how was it getting his dish?
It was good. So his chef friend taught him how to cook that during the pandemic. So that was the first thing that he learned how to cook. So I thought that was cool. If you're like me and you don't cook, you can make Tony Rice's dish. It's all good.
It was really cool. And his friend, Rick DeLeon, actually is an awesome chef. And we came up with this idea, well, actually Rick did, of, again, during the pandemic, because we always used to go out maybe once or twice a month and have dinner with each other. And now we couldn't. We couldn't go to restaurants. Folks were afraid to have people come to our houses. So if you can believe it, we actually did like Zoom dinners, right? And so it was Tony's turn, and we all totally forgot that Tony, and he's like, I'm gonna order pizza. Like, no, it doesn't work like that.
No, you gotta cook.
Exactly. So Rick wound up coming up with this idea but it's a phenomenal dish. Also, I thought was interesting, Mike Elston's ribs for like the whole team or the whole D line. I mean, how did you break that down for like just a regular family?
They're amazing. He did size it down for a regular family. Okay. I will say that's probably my husband's favorite dish. He's already made it like 4 more times. So I texted his wife Beth and was like, I'm going to have to say this is my husband's favorite recipe because it's super easy. And it's like hilarious. Fall off the bone good. So
that is absolutely hilarious. And then you have a couple of tributes. Reggie Hose, that was his mom's oxtail soup.
Yeah, it was good. We never had oxtail before. And
I can't wait to try it. So
there's 2 oxtail recipes in there. So imagine that. Well, so we have a butcher here in town and we bought half a cow. So my husband calls the butcher and says, okay, how do I find oxtail? And he's like, you already have it in your freezer.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Didn't even know we had it. So
that is hilarious. Not the fact that you bought a half a cow, but the fact that. So again, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Also, now I have ran into Devon McDonald a couple times, but I'm assuming that was an interesting dish to cook because Devon McDonald is Jamaican.
Yep.
And his dish was, I don't remember it offhand.
Curried chicken. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how was that?
It was good. I'm not a huge curry person, but it was really good. So I think, opened my eyes to try a lot of new things. And so now I think I'll cook some more curry.
Nice.
Now that I know how to cook it. So
nice. And you had an individual that was a fellow teammate of mine, Braxton Banks, who's no longer with us. And how are you? Because when I went through the book, I was like, oh my God, Braxton, wow. And you have a great picture in there of him smiling. I could actually grab my book. Hold on a second. Awesome picture of him smiling, which he did constantly all the time. I don't know if you can check here. Let me see. That's Braxton right there.
Yeah.
And he had just had this infectious smile. So how did you get kind of Braxton's recipe?
So I was talking to a classmate of his, Lisa Boykin, and she was like, I kind of told her I was writing this cookbook, and I said, I was just thinking if you or someone in his family knows what his favorite recipe is, I'd kind of like to put it in as a tribute. And she was so excited. And so reached out to his mom and his sister, and they gave me the favorite recipe, and it's really good too. So yeah, it was just nice to be able to remember a couple people that we've lost. And I was really glad I could do that.
Sure. And actually speaking about one of those individuals, Jack Snow, who I actually did not know a lot about. Can you talk about him a little bit? Yeah,
so Jack played, Jack and John Hewitt and my dad were all classmates. I've known those two gentlemen since I was, knee-high to a grasshopper. And because we lived in Southern California for 10 years, and that's where John lives near Manhattan Beach. And Jack was out there with the Rams. And so just have been part of our family's lives. And so Jack, after Notre Dame, he went on to play for the Rams for a long time, and then he became a broadcaster with the Rams.
Okay.
And so we moved to St. Louis, and the Rams followed us to St. Louis.
They followed you guys, right?
And so my dad and Jack were able to kind of reconnect again, and he would have Jack come speak to my dad was a brewmaster, so Jack would come speak to the Master Brewers Association group. And so I became friends with Jack's daughter, Stephanie.
Okay.
And so he ended up he had hip surgery and got a staph infection and passed away far too young.
Oh my God.
And then she and I got pretty close because she has 4 kids. Her youngest daughter has Wolfram's disease, which is it's a very aggressive form of diabetes. And so most kids that have Wolfram's don't live past 30. And so it's pretty severe. It's, her daughter's lost her eyesight, just a lot of like body functions stop working. And so we've kind of done a lot of work together trying to raise money. They're doing research through Washington University, and they've actually made a lot of progress. But so Steph and I are pretty close just through, I'm always helping her with fundraisers and stuff for Raquel. And so I reached out to her and I was like, did your dad have a favorite recipe? I would love to put it in the cookbook. And she was super excited. So she gave me a recipe and her dad's headshot from when he worked for the Rams, and which is exactly how I remember him. So it was really cool.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And there was also one of course, you were in there a little bit, and
I do cook a little bit.
there you go, and you had a wonderful picture with your grandmother.
Yeah.
Find that. Hold on. So yes, can you talk about your dish while I find the picture of you and your grandmother?
I do have a lot of good memories of being in the kitchen with my grandma. I may not have been, super hands-on.
I wasn't listening, but
my grandma was a great cook. And, I think my mom and her sister are a little bent out of shape that I didn't put one of grandma's recipes in the book. But the recipe I put in is something that I cook. And so, I don't know, I wanted it to be something of mine, so.
And here's the awesome picture of Lisa and her grandmother.
Me and my grandma, yeah. I miss her
if I was
too.
really high tech, I would have been able to put them up on the screen. So I do apologize about that.
That's all right.
So in that way, now, how often do you make that dish?
I make it at holidays. So like when a bunch of people come to town, it's great because you cook it the night before. Well, you make it the night before, put it in the fridge, and then all you do in the morning is cook it. And it's a breakfast blueberry French toast casserole. Super easy and it's delicious. So it's good. You wake up on Christmas morning and breakfast is already ready to go.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I think I might set a goal and try to at least cook some of these. Also want to talk about Justin Nico's dish.
Yeah, the cornbread stuffing.
Yes.
Delicious.
See,
Very good.
This is so what I'm just gonna call you and say, hey, how about this one? Or as a meal, should I put Justin's dish with Devon's dish and for dessert use with Billy Hackett's? I mean, you can almost do kind of like a meal. Like there was one app where you like spun like protein, vegetable, and something. You can kind of do that and shake them up and say Hackett, McDonald, and Zorich or something like that. So that'd be kind of.
I also took, Rick Meyer has a winery, and Tom Sessi, he's another Notre Dame guy. He's got a winery. So there's about 6 dishes in there that you'll notice that I have some wine pairings with. So
there you go.
We tried to promote some of our, alums wineries. And then, of course, Tavon Coney, he's got a whiskey.
Yes.
So his whiskey goes really good with his hot wings.
Of course. That's awesome.
Yeah, Evan Sharpley paired his chicken and waffles with whiskey and a good cigar. So
there you go. That's even better.
Yeah.
Even better. Well, I wanted to end talking about the book on Coach Holtz's recipe. So we all you talked a little bit about kind of your introduction with Coach Holtz. And so how was that dish?
The pumpkin cake. It's really good. It's kind of like a carrot cake a little bit. It's got that same kind of icing. I will say, so in the recipe, it calls for 2 cups of pumpkin. And my husband misread it and put in 2 cans of pumpkin.
Oh my God.
So the cake was very moist and very pumpkin-y, but it was
very pumpkin-y. Says the chef of the house, right? That's interesting. So you could always kind of blame them. So you know what? It's 2 cups, not 2 cans. I think that's pretty.
But it was still good. We still ate it. So I will also say Thai Goods cheesecake.
Okay.
It's pretty good. We'd never made a cheesecake before, but it was the bomb.
That is awesome. I tell you, you should kind of do like a little, or at least maybe put it on social media or something like that. Just kind of like spin them or do whatever, and then find out, hey, what does Hackett, Zorich, and Coney have, or what dish would this make, or something like that. So I think that's pretty cool. And in selfishly, I got to mention my dish because my wife actually helped me with it. I like to say, how was cooking that, or how was making that one?
It was good. Yeah. I mean, that's totally my kind of food. So it was delicious.
Yes. It was the poke bowl, because we love sushi. We love poke. We love tuna, salmon, all that stuff. And we were able to kind of come up with this great dish. And I paid Lisa a whole bunch of money to get on the back of her book. So selfishly, that is me right there. And then that's in the kitchen, which is a couple rooms over. And it was really cool, but I think my wife was upset because one of the pictures we sent you had the garbage can in the photo. So, but you did not use the one with the garbage can. So she was really excited about it. She's like, "Why'd you send that one?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't know. I forgot. I'm sorry."
I sent it to her to get her approval before I.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So now, along with food, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit, or I mentioned it. I was fascinated by this when you told me, but even more fascinated because you've added more features and you've sent some phenomenal pictures of some animals just looking very majestic. I think I said one looked like the Lion King or something like that. So can you explain a little bit, like literally you have, and I have the website here, it's called Branson's Wild World Zoo?
Yep, Branson's Wild World.
Here we go. I got it right here. Okay. So folks, please check it out. I have not been there yet, but it's awesome. Please tell us the story behind this.
So we buy this zoo, and my husband, decided to move it to a new location. Location.
How was
so,
that? I mean, do you just like? I mean, are you looking for like, hey, where can I put a zoo? Like, where's that? Like, what are you looking for? I mean, is that like on Craigslist? You look on Craigslist? I mean,
right. Branson's a tourist town, so we knew we needed to be more in town. The original location was about 30 minutes outside of town.
Okay.
And it had a lot of acreage. And a lot of the original animals we had were things that we weren't ready for. Like at the beginning, we weren't ready to do lions and tigers.
Oh, wow.
So we rehomed some of the original animals to different zoos. And so the original zoo was mostly indoor. So we bought this building that was like an old, like Office Depot or something.
Oh, wow.
It was just like a big warehouse building, and built an aquarium. We have reptiles and snakes and alligators and crocodiles and spiders and dart frogs. And, at the beginning we had some animals. But now, like, as things have gone along, we had to go through all this certification. We have big cats and things like that now. And so then we renovated all the land behind the building to make homes for Moses the lion and, Tatiana the tiger. So, it was definitely an evolution from where it started. And of course, he's a super handy guy. He built haunted houses. He's very creative. So he built like this giant pirate ship where the aquarium is, and the lemurs have their own playground. And, so it's not just like a zoo. I mean, it's very almost theatrical in nature. And then there's a lot of interactive experiences. So you can go in with the dingoes and pet the dingoes. You can go in with the lemurs and give them a little snack. And I mean, obviously, you're not going to pet a tiger when you come to visit, but there are a fair amount of animals that you can touch and feed, and our handlers are very educated. They, have way more knowledge than we do. I mean, as business owners, but they're all zoologists and all that fancy stuff, and we have a veterinary on staff. But the shutdown was challenging last year, but I feel like now that we figured out how to survive something like that, we could survive anything. Like, we've totally readjusted the business model because you never know when that rainy day is actually going to show up.
Sure. And we're able to help. We're able to get help from folks in the community, or I mean, were there?
We did,
sponsors
Yep, we had help from people in the community. We had a GoFundMe. We had businesses that helped us. So like Walmart helped us with food and stuff because, nobody wants a hungry tiger.
That's true. Especially if they get out, because now they're roaming the streets and
Not good.
That's terrific. Wow. And so, I mean, how close, and again, I mean, I know this is kind of not based on your life, but how close is the movie with, what's his face? Not Ben Affleck, but the other one. Matt Damon. Yeah. How close was that? Was that kind of autobiographical? Or?
It's definitely an adventure. I mean, when we first moved to Branson, we lived on property where the big cats were. And so you'd wake up in the morning and the lion would be roaring. And, I'd walk outside with my coffee and sit and watch the tiger. I mean, the big cats are hands down my favorite. I could just sit and watch them. And some of the cats that we've had since they were cubs. And so I bottle fed some of these cats. And so, I will stick my hand in and pet somebody. And my husband's like, one of these days you're going to lose a hand. And I'm like, I fed her since she was a baby. She's not gonna. But, and the handlers are trained to know what they can and can't do. And obviously there's 2 fences between people and any of the big cats. But they're my favorite. I will sit and watch them for hours,
That's awesome. I would love to do that. Wow. I would just kind of love to camp out there and at least just kind of watch them, because when you're sending the pictures, as I said, I mean, it was just so majestic, and it's great to find or to know people that appreciate animals way more than I thought. I mean, we have 2 rescue Rottweilers, we have 2 cats in the house. I thought I loved animals. You take the cake. I think that's awesome.
Well, it's just so cool because I didn't expect the kind of relationship that you would build with these animals. And so when I go over there, those big cats get so excited. They come running up to the fence and they want to play. And I can run down the fence line. They'll run up and down with me. And I didn't expect that. You have a relationship with your dog or your cat or whatever. I mean, you saw the cat. He's my shadow. But I guess I didn't think that would translate to a wild animal. So that was really cool to kind of see that bond, that I just didn't expect.
That's nice. That is nice. Well, again, you are living my dream. You're writing books, which I know I've talked to you about maybe doing one myself, but I wanted to get some kind of encouragement, some knowledge from you, which you've been more than happy to give. Someday.
Well, and now, we're big music people, so now we've opened an 80s music attraction.
Yes, please tell us about that. I forgot about that, please.
So we're just big music people. We've always loved concerts, and when I first met my husband, he ran a bar, and so we did a lot of advertising with the radio station, which got us into a lot of concerts. And so we're always trying to find venues and things that have 80s music. That's kind of our thing. And so he decided to we bought an old theater in Branson. So it has an 80s themed haunted house. So like Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger.
Nice.
It's got an 80s themed miniature golf, which is all like rock and roll.
Oh, that's great.
And a blacklight mini golf. We've got 2 escape room games. So one's Back to the Future and one's Alien.
Wow.
We've got a movie theater where you can sit and watch 80s movies. And we've got the Gremlins are all sitting in the front row because, in the movie Gremlins, they're in the movie theater.
Oh, my gosh.
We have a wax museum filled with wax figures like Michael Jackson and Tom Cruise. And we've got all this memorabilia. And then around Thanksgiving, we're going to open a restaurant and bar in the bottom of the building, and it's going to be the New Wave Cafe. So my husband was a DJ, and he has all these crates of records. So we framed all the records and put them up on the walls.
Oh, my God.
And we have like signed guitars, and
that's so cool.
He's been like a little kid in a candy store. So it's been a lot of fun. And then we're going to have karaoke in the bar, and then we have a stage, so we'll bring in tribute bands and maybe bigger things down the road, but you never know.
Wow, lions and tigers and haunted houses and 80s music. That's great. Okay, so I guess the next question is what aren't you guys going to do?
I don't know.
Well,
we don't sit still very well. That's
apparently
for sure.
not. I mean, and the folks in Branson have to be just totally excited about this. I mean, even the folks, I know it's a tourist town, but I mean, this sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, Branson used to be a lot of country music and Andy Williams and the Osmond Brothers. But let's face it, like 80s is now vintage, right? We're the old people now. Exactly. So
yes, we are.
We're just trying to capitalize on something we love that we know other people love. So, but we're hoping to do more music related things at the venue. So stay tuned for more exciting things.
This is very exciting, folks. If you're first, check out the website, bransonswildworld.com. They have all the information there, again, about what's kind of happening now. The 80s Museum, this is going to be great, and future events. It's really exciting. And then also wanted to throw up the website for your books one more time. You have a chance to get all of her books here. Again, tomorrow we're going to be at Augie's Locker Room in South Bend, Indiana, at 1811 South Bend Avenue, and she's going to be signing her cookbooks. Hopefully, maybe even making some, maybe not.
Maybe I'll have all the books with me. So if you need book 1, 2, or 3, I'll have them too.
That'll be great. And again, it's just, I call her a modern day historian because, I mean, if she doesn't know, and we've talked about this before, she's going to go out and find it. And this is information that you have at the ready. These books are terrific. I've learned so much about guys that I had no idea about. Some of them I even got ideas from my podcast. I went through your books. Oh, that's a great story. Let me find him. So the idea that I'm kind of stealing some of your thunder, I hope you don't mind. But
don't mind at all. We're family. We can all share, you know. And if you missed today's Throwback Thursday post, I wrote about the Notre Dame Navy game from 1970. So you might like something
there you
there
go.
too.
See, all right. There you go. That's impressive. And the exciting thing, though, is that we're going to be together hanging out. Augie's Locker Room tomorrow from 1 to 3 in South Bend. Folks, please stop by. We would love to see you, love to hang out. As you can see, she's very personable. And you might even get some great recipes from some of your favorite Notre Dame folks. And again, would highly encourage it, not because I'm on the back cover, but because it is a great book. So, Lisa, this has been fun. Once again, the idea that you've kind of inspired me to kind of look toward not necessarily even writing a book, but just kind of really kind of taking this podcast a little more seriously, because after reading several stories in your books, I can really kind of relate to how these guys feel when they're talking to you. And so I try to kind of make them feel as comfortable as you made them feel. So thank you very much for inspiring me to.
You're welcome.
Well, absolutely.
I
learn from the best. I learn from the best. Again, check us out tomorrow. Augie's Locker Room, 1 to 3. Folks, we would love to see you. I'd like to thank everyone watching and listening to this episode of the Zorich Podcast, or Conversations with Leaders and Legends. This podcast, along with our other podcasts, are on my YouTube page at youtube.com/ChrisZorich50, as well as on Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't already to get new content. Also, check out the description below, because I'll have a list of all of Lisa's books there, so you can just buy them from either her website or Amazon. Do we want the website and not Amazon? Or?
Website's better because the price is going to be better, and then I sign everything. So
there you go. So forget
Christmas
Amazon.
Presents, I'll do autograph, and
we're going to have all of them. We're going to have all of them at and you actually do the gift wrapping yourself?
I do free gift wrapping if you buy on my website.
Forget about Amazon. I'm going to give you the link to her website so you can great Christmas gifts. Lisa, this has been great. Once again, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Go Irish.
All right. Go Irish.